You're with Julian on the Brown Note, trying to race through as much as I can on this very packed show. A review of Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. I think that's what it's called. Is it called Axel F? Yes, Axel F. Named after the titular character Axel Foley, but also the fabulous track Axel F by Harold Faltermeyer, who does the music again. And this is part of the modern world's unending quest to remake, reboot, nostalgia trip. We've recently had the second Ghostbusters film with a lot of the original casting. And it doesn't seem like there's anything that won't get remade. This is like pre-Bad Boys, I guess, in a way. Obviously, everyone knows the originals, and the 1, 2, 3 that Eddie Murphy had at the start of the 80s was one of the great 3-film runs for any new star. 48 Hours, Trading Places, and Beverly Hills Cop. It was an amazing run. And his star kind of waned a bit after that. He was an iconic artist for his personality. His stand-ups like Raw and Delirious were iconic again. The films towards the end of the 80s saw his star wane. We had the martial artsy one. I can't even remember what it was called. But then the Beverly Hills Cop 2 and 3, and 3 was particularly awful. He kind of went off the boil, and that's really what a lot of stars did. I think, when people look at Tom Cruise, very few people have managed to maintain that level of stardom from the 1980s. It's virtually impossible to do, and he went into the wilderness partly because he made a lot of films like Pluto Nash, which cost a fortune and were absolutely dreadful. And he existed in this wilderness until the Shrek movies kind of resurrected him as a tentpole artist, as Donkey. He came back in the Shrek films, which were hugely successful. But this is really the most prominent lead role he's had for a long time. And like a lot of these retread films, and I'm looking at you, The Force Awakens from Star Wars. I'm looking at you, the new Planet of the Apes film. I'm looking at you, the Rocky reboot. They do stick to the original screenplay far too much. So we do get Axel Foley in Detroit. Something happens in Beverly Hills. He has to go down there and visit what's going on. With the caveat this time he's got an estranged daughter played by Taylor Page. I think that's his daughter. And along the way they introduce some new characters and bring back some of the old. And the whole plot is similar to the first film with some sort of modern caveats along the way. Some of the old timers, as like Judge Reinhold, looks so old, like really old. He's another major star from the 80s that didn't carry over. But we also get people like Paul Reiser and Kevin Bacon, who wasn't, I believe, in the originals, but was certainly making a star of himself. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt as well appears as a newbie. And I think, I can't remember who the guy was that turned up that also looked like he was from the original. But it's broadly a corrupt cop scenario film where cops are involved in drug dealing and so on. And there isn't much meat to the story. But honestly, it was a fine watch. The nostalgia value of seeing Axel driving along, listening to Axel F was quite the trip. The soundtrack, like the Top Gun soundtrack, like the Pretty in Pink soundtrack, was one of the best of the 80s as far as soundtracks and not scores. Like the individual tracks on it were momentous. And Harold Faltermeyer helms the music here as well. It doesn't have that electric edge. The one thing that Beverly Hills Cop 1 had was this electric edge. It was amazing. But the one thing this film does have in spades is Eddie Murphy. He doesn't look a day older. Eddie Murphy looks great in this film. He's like 30, 40 years on, and he looks absolutely fantastic. And he's sharp as a tack. He is undoubtedly the number one reason to watch it. If you look at Judge Reinhold, you're like, shouldn't you be in an old people's home? And he's probably younger than Eddie Murphy, but Eddie Murphy is fantastic in this. He really does have everything. It's just the film itself, directed, I believe, by the original. Oh no, it's Mark Malloy. It's not the same. I thought it was the same director for a while. It just doesn't have that absolute incredible electric touch that made the first one so compelling, and quite an originator as far as melding quite a tough cop drama with a genuine comedy. I thought it didn't trade the comedy for being quite rough and violent, and having Stephen Burkoff, I think, as a malevolent villain. And at the same time, the comedy didn't make it silly like a lot of those crappier buddy cop movies from the 80s. And this was really a preeminent buddy cop movie, even though it wasn't one buddy. He had the two buddies. It was a very much, one is antagonistic and the other two are very by the book and so on. It was very influential on a raft of very mediocre films that followed. I think a lot of them did feature Judge Reinhold. So overall, yeah, it's a fine watch. Nothing wrong with it. They don't really put many feet wrong. It's very unambitious. There's you get to see Serge, if you remember Serge from the original film. They shoehorn as many people in as possible. And, the Kevin Bacon is always value for money. I'm not sold on Joseph Gordon-Levitt all the time, but I thought John Ashton as Chief Taggart was really good as well. He didn't seem to have aged that much. He seemed to still have it. And it's pretty grim at times, but it's still very funny as well. So I'm going to give it a very solid 7 out of 10 for Beverly Hills Cop Axel F.